Hello, I'm Bruce Lorincz, and this show is entitled Bruce on the Loose. And now we're going ahead and reading some stories to our youth in Wadsworth and beyond. And today we have a Lorincz family favorite, and it is, "There are rocks in my socks," says the ox to the fox. And the author is Patricia Thomas, and Mordecai Gernston is the illustrator. And again, maybe some of you young students out there could go ahead and author a book and go ahead and show your creativity, and also maybe even illustrate or get a friend to illustrate your book. And that would be great, because I know there are a lot of very fine artists and good art students here in Wadsworth and, of course, beyond. And this is a book that really goes ahead and talks about advice, who we should get advice from, and we'll go ahead and see what this book tells us. "There are rocks in my socks," says the ox to the fox. "Bumpy old, lumpy old, crumpy old rocks, pinchy and squinchy. Whenever one walks, I feel very grumpy with rocks in my socks." "See here, my dear steer," said the fox to the ox, "why don't you stop grumbling and take out those rocks? I must say I've noticed the longer one talks, the less time one has for taking out rocks." "But, sir, there's no way," said the ox to the fox, "to get rid of the rocks that are inside my socks. With my shoes underneath and my feet firmly on top, I see no way at all of removing the rocks." "Let me think," said the fox to the ox with a wink. "There must be a way to get rocks out of socks. Eureka! I have it! Just do a flip-flop. Put your legs in the air so your feet aren't on top of the rocks. Then they will slide right out of your socks. It's a good thing I'm clever," said the fox to the ox. "Yes, indeed, you are clever," said the ox to the fox. "If I do a flip-flop so my feet are on top, then the rocks will come tumbling right out of my socks. Flip, zip, flop, plop." "There's a tack in my back," said the ox to the fox. "A prickly old, tickly old, stickly old tack. I really don't need this particular tack. If I find it was missing, I'd not wish it back. Furthermore, those rocks haven't budged from my socks," said the ox to the fox. Said the fox to the ox, "There's no need to sigh. I have it all solved in the blink of an eye. Quick, flick your tail 'neath your back, and you'll knock aside quickly that prickly old tack. You're lucky I'm here," said the fox to the ox. "Yes, you're a great help," said the ox to the fox. "With a swish of my tail, I'll give that old tack a good whack that will knock it from under my back. Swish, wish, whump, thump." "There's a rail on my tail," said the ox to the fox. "A naughty old, cloddy old, rocky old, rotty old rail. And I'm sure if this rail were placed on a scale, the whole thing would weigh just as much as a whale. I venture to state that in time one would have the very great weight of a rail on one's tail, not to mention the tack that is still in my back and all those rocks that are still in my socks," said the ox to the fox. There, don't despair, said the fox to the ox, for it's true, don't you see? I'm sure you'll agree, you're no more to fear as long as you've me. Your troubles are over, I swear it is true, for what else could possibly happen to you? Bzz, bzz, it. Uh-oh. Said the ox to the fox, thank you, my friend, for your faith that my troubles will come to an end. Perhaps you are right to make light of my plight, but it seems that the end is not yet quite in sight. For here I remain with rocks in my socks, an attack in my back, and a rail on my tail. And if that's not enough, I believe a large bee has decided to stop and rest on my knee. That makes me uneasy, in fact somewhat queasy, for a large bee is a thing with a very large sting. Said the fox to the ox, yes, it does seem to me you'd be much better off without that large bee. However, because I'm so clever, I instantly see a way to remove the large bee from your knee. Just be quick, kick your toes in the air toward your nose, which will shake your knee free of that unwelcome bee. Of course, said the ox, how stupid of me. I'm remarkably easy to shake off a bee. Kick, flick, kick, zip, whip. Said the ox to the fox, you've observed, I suppose, that I seem to have kicked myself in the nose. Meanwhile, the large bee, not choosing to flee, has been startled instead into stinging my knee, which is, I confess, quite unpleasant for me. What's more, with these rocks still in my socks, and the tack in my back, and the rail on my tail, I do believe it is fair to state my situation is less than great. Simply hippity hop stop. My word, said the bird, my eyes must be blurred. I've never seen anything quite so absurd. A big grown-up ox with his back on a tack and a rail on his tail and a bee on his knee gives his own nose a whack. Please don't go, Mr. Fox. As for you, Mr. Ox, would you care to relate how you got in this state? It's rather a long story, said the ox to the bird. It is hard to explain everything that's occurred. I believe it began with my friend here, the fox, who's an expert at getting rocks out of socks. Said the bird to the ox, I really must say, you're going about it in a very strange way. Why not simply roll over, lift your back off the tack that just slid, and just slide your tail out from under the rail and straighten your knee, which so obviously will set the bee free. Mumble, tumble, roll, bless my soul. Now take off your shoes, then take off your socks. Try wiggling your toes, then dump out the rocks. Next put back each sock and put back each shoe, which is still, Mr. Ox, that's all you needed to do. Is that true, what I've heard? Said the ox to the bird. All I needed to do to get rid of the rocks was to take off my shoes and empty my socks. Of course, said the bird. Jingle, wingle, bump, 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 thump, whoop, whoolump. I believe, said the ox, it might well be said that my friend the fox has rocks on his head. Well, I sure hope you enjoyed the book we read. There are rocks in my socks, said the ox to the fox, and I think that really says a lot about who we can trust and who we need to get advice from. I think certainly your teachers are one group that really cares about you very, very much, and they certainly would be good people to, if you have any questions or any difficulty, to go and seek out their advice and counsel. Certainly your minister or Christian education director at church would be another good source to go and get some advice, good advice, unlike we got from the ox got from the fox. Grandparents are another source. They really care deeply about our success, and they certainly have the wisdom and the knowledge and the experience and background to go ahead and give us good advice and suggestions on how we can tackle certain problems. And finally, our parents. They certainly are involved in every aspect of our lives, and they certainly will give us good suggestions and tips on how to move forward. Like the bird. The bird really observed what was going on and came in and gave the ox good ideas and tips and got out of his many dilemmas that he was facing at that particular time. Now, everyone, I have another wonderful book, and it really is one that does teach us some things about persistence and having something in our mind. It's called Angelina Ballerina, and the illustrations by Helen Craig, and the book by Catherine Hollibird. And we're looking forward to this. This is another family favorite. Angelina's mother was always calling her, "Angelina, it's time to straighten up your room now," or "Please get ready for school now, Angelina." But Angelina never wanted to go to school. She never wanted to do anything but dance. One night, Angelina even danced in her dreams. And when she woke up in the morning, she knew that she was going to be a real ballerina someday. When Mrs. Mausling called Angela for breakfast, Angelina was standing on her bed doing curtsies. When it was time for school, Angelina was trying on her mother's hats and making sad and funny faces at herself in the mirror. "You're going to be late again, Angelina," cried Mrs. Mausling. But Angelina did not care. She skipped over rocks and practiced high leaps over the flower beds until she landed right in old Mrs. Hodgepodge's pansies and got a terrible scolding. At playtime, she twisted and spun across the playground so fast that none of the little boys in her class could catch up with her, and they were all very cross. After school, she did a beautiful arabesque in the kitchen and knocked over a pitcher of milk and a plate of her mother's best cheddar cheese pies. "Oh, Angelina, your dancing is nothing but a nuisance," exclaimed her mother. She sent Angelina straight upstairs to her room and went to have a talk with Mr. Mausling. Mrs. Mausling shook her head and said, "I just don't know what to do about Angelina." Mr. Mausling thought a while, and then he said, "I think I may have an idea." The same afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. Mausling went out together before the shop closed. The next morning at breakfast, Angelina found a large box with her name on it. Inside the box was a pink ballet dress and a pair of pink ballet slippers. Angelina's father smiled at her kindly. "I think you are ready to take ballet lessons," he said. Angelina was so excited that she jumped straight up in the air and landed with one foot on her mother's sewing basket. The very next day, Angelina took her pink slippers and ballet dress and went to her first lesson at Miss Lily's ballet school. There were 9 other little girls in the class, and they all practiced curtsies and pliés and ran around the room together just like fairies. Then they skipped and twirled about until it was time to go home. "Congratulations, Angelina," said Miss Lily. "You are a good little dancer, and if you work hard, you may grow up to be a real ballerina one day." Angelina ran all the way home to give her mother a big hug. "I'm the happiest little girl in the world today," she said. From that day on, Angelina came downstairs when her mother called her. She straightened up her room and she went to school on time. She helped her mother make cheddar cheese pies, and she even let the boys catch her in the playground sometimes. Angelina was so busy at Miss Lily's that she didn't need to dance at supper time or bedtime or on the way to school anymore. She went every day to her ballet lessons and worked very hard for many years, until at last she became the most famous ballerina, Mademoiselle Angelina, and people came from far and wide to enjoy her lovely dancing. Well, that certainly tells a story. Angelina was very persistent. She was hyper-focused on being a ballerina, and that's all she really thought about, even in her dreams. She thought about being a ballerina and put all her emphasis and her time and energy into that. And her mother and father did a wonderful gesture in going ahead and allowing her to go ahead and get a dress. They bought her slippers along with the dress and enrolled her in a ballet school. They thought that would be something that she would certainly enjoy, and maybe they didn't even recognize the benefits that Angelina would now be getting up on time, would be helping not only with her room, but helping her mother, and certainly I'm sure at school. My guess is that her grades, whatever they were before, even went up because she was so focused on what she was doing and doing her homework at home at night and making sure she even let the boys catch her during recess, which was something because she was so fast and nimble. Before, the boys were getting very upset because they couldn't even catch Angelina Ballerina on the playground. So I think boys and girls and any adults watching the show, this kind of lets us know that if you are focused and if you have a dream, really put all your efforts and your ideas into that. How you can get a mentor. And it didn't really talk in this book about someone that was an experienced dancer, but Miss Lily was certainly a guiding force in her efforts, and she encouraged her to keep working, practicing, and someday you are going to be a ballerina. And that certainly motivated her very, very much. So I hope if you have an idea, a dream early on that you want to be a certain profession, and you maybe like animals and want to be a veterinarian, or you like helping people, you may want to be a counselor, you're a very good listener, or you certainly like to go ahead and help with putting out fires, or be helping out people, being an attorney, or a minister, or something in that area, please keep those ideas and just build on them and work toward that goal. And I hope you've enjoyed Bruce on the Loose. Next week, we're going to go ahead and hear about Ferdinand the Bull, a popular book in the Lorincz household. And we'll bring up another book with Little Bear and his exploits. And thank you for viewing Bruce on the Loose. Hope you can join us next week.